And what was your path to doing this? To finding ways to combine the sacred and the profane, did you say?
Yeah. Well, one part would be inner search, and you could say spiritual seeking, or whether it's psychological, emotional, spiritual, relational, and etc. I think it's important that, let's say, the fortunate of us first have the awareness and then the time and space to choose to explore those things before we go about just running around the world being ambitious and motivated and potentially causing unintended consequences that we haven't even thought about.
Even with good intentions.
Even with good intentions. So it became a part of my practice to work on those dimensions as lifelong practice.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the more practical side, so that was the inner work part of it, and then on the more practical side, I got myself involved with networks and organizations and learning opportunities that exposed me to pioneers and visionaries and people that were willing to break out of the mold and be unorthodox and think about these things differently. I usually, when I get asked that or talk about this in other kinds of interviews, I'll talk about meeting the founders of Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's and Body Shop and Stonyfield Yogurt and those kinds of things who believed they could go into business in order to make a positive contribution to things larger than just their shareholders.
Yeah.
But I also got exposed to people like Bernie Glassman and Ram Dass and other spiritual teachers who were intersecting with these entrepreneurs and talking about all of the above.
And can you tell us a little bit about that intersection? How and where did that
It
occur?
happen?
Yeah.
Well, there were some really intriguing and thoughtful people that pulled together a network called Social Venture Network.
Mm-hmm.
And it came out of a philanthropic network. It was working on strategic philanthropy and similar kinds of issues is how do you hold and give away money in ways that are addressing the unseen and the deeper aspects of life, in addition to what are the metrics of what my philanthropy produces, how many people do I feed, and that kind of thing. It's like, what am I conveying and how am I improving the potential enlightenment of all beings? And they had a formula which was for the Social Venture Network. So there were a group of people in the philanthropic organization that wanted to talk about business and finance in addition to giving away money. And it was debated, and the philanthropic organization decided to not do that. And so a group of people, which I was one of the invited first attendees, held a gathering that turned into the Social Venture Network. And their idea was something like bring together 70% for-profit, 30% not-for-profit, because not-for-profits ultimately also are enterprises. They have budgets, they have staff, they have to meet their budgets and payroll.
And that must have been a kind of radical idea at the time.
It was. It's still a bit so.
Yeah, it is still.
There's a big separation of what you are taught in the for-profit world and the not-for-profit world, which I consider a bit of a ghetto that's created for the not-for-profit world that doesn't get exposed as effectively to good business practices, et cetera. And the unifying value was we want to understand how to make our enterprises more broadly constructive and positive to things besides just the financial. And as you know from where we met, I've been involved for 17 years in producing something called the Social Venture Institute. The Social Venture Institute grew out of the Social Venture Network as a kind of a training place for entrepreneurs. Social Venture Network, more of a network, Institute, more kind of training, but course, carrying all the networking aspects too.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that model.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've spent a lot of time carrying it forward in a more regional context and enhancing it and bringing it to a place like Hollyhock, which is a facility that also does kind of whole person lifelong learning. And all of that fits together really well. At SVM is where I got the ideas and mentors and saw other people. I found many of the investments that we made. And then when we eventually launched Renewal 2 and brought in money from many people, a lot of the investors came from those same networks.